Hello Internet, welcome back to the channel, and today we are going to review the new feature of version 2.3 of Advanced Themer, and we are going to review the new CSS grid builder that is shipping inside 2.3, and we are going to play with different examples from simple grids to more complex design, and follow this video to learn all the tricks with the new CSS grid builder. Okay, so first of all, what we need to do is to enable the option inside the theme settings. So let's go inside the backend option. We will click on Builder Tricks, Elements, and you'll see a new option, Grid Builder, here. Let's just toggle on this option and save the settings. Let's go back now inside the builder and refresh. Okay, so I prepared 3 examples. The first one is a really simple grid. Like you can see, we have 10 blocks inside a container, and the first thing we want to do is to click on the container, change the display value to grids. And now, since we activated the option, there is a new icon, the grid builder icon, next to the grid value. We can click on it and it will open the CSS grid model. There are a lot going on here. So the first thing is on the top right, you can see the breakpoint devices, and you'll be able to change the various grids for each breakpoint. Okay? The second thing, of course, is the grid itself. So you can see all the blocks have been auto-populated inside the grid. You can see the value on top, which can be changed, of course. So all the columns width can be changed from 1FR to, let's say, 3FR, and the grid will adapt to this new value. You can insert, of course, any kind of valid CSS value. So if you want to put 200 pixel, it will be 200 pixel. And anything you might think of as a valid CSS value is accepted in this field. The same things for the rows. So if we set 2 pixel on the rows, it will also resize. Maybe I can make 400 to be more clear, and it resizes as well. Okay. You can, of course, add more columns. You can use these buttons to add more columns or remove columns. And the same goes with the row. You can add more rows to your grid or remove them. You have up to 12 columns and 12 rows. You can change in these settings, the parent settings. So you can set 12 columns and 12 rows. Okay? We won't do that now. We'll just stick to the 4. Sorry. And you can change, of course, the gap. Add more gap, let's say 50 pixel. It will add more gap to your grid. You have also the possibility to resize your grid. This is only a visual effect to be more consistent with your actual grid. And by hovering this lateral bar here, you can resize your grid laterally or vertically. Okay? So, of course, we can manipulate the items inside the grid. So, if we hover on any item, you see that we can click on them. That will select the item, and a new menu will show up on the right, the child settings. So here we have the ID of our child, the label that we can change to first, and you see that now the label inside the item has been updated, and it will be also updated inside the structure panel. We can also add values like the column or the rows values here. A z-index value that is really interesting when dealing with overlapping grids. And you can change the color. As you see, each item has an auto-generated color to differentiate them, and you can of course set it to whatever hue color you want to set inside the CSS Grid Builder. Again, it's just a visual help. It has no consequences on the front end. Okay, but we can remove this particular view, which is a child view. We can remove by clicking on the remove item here, and we'll come back to the general view. Okay, so in each item, you see on the top left we have an icon that shows the order inside the DOM. So the first block is of course the first one inside the DOM, but when we are going to manipulate the CSS, it might be clearer to know which item is present inside the DOM and in which order. Let me make an example. I want to move this block first to the end of the grid. I just have to hold the block, drag it to the last item. You see that there is a yellow guide that helped me, and release it. And now my block first will be at the end of the grid. But the DOM didn't change, of course. The CSS grid is just applying CSS rules, but the DOM number remains the same. Okay, now that I change the position of the block, you see that only this item has a new icon, which is the reset style. That means that we applied certain styles to this item. The other one have no reset style on it, because this is the only item that has now some value as column start and column end, and row start and row end. If we click on reset style, it will reset the values inside the fields, and of course it will come back to our original place. Okay, let's remove this. So you can move your grid around. You can of course resize it too. So if you hover this icon, the resize icon, and drag the border to the guide, you see that now if I release it, the block will be 2 per 2, right? And you can again change the move it around in the CSS grids. Make sure that when you move a block that is more than 1 per 1, so in this case it's 2 per 2, you see that we see only one yellow guide, which will be basically the bottom right of your block. So if I release it here, it will take this one, the bottom right of the guide, and it will fill the row and column 8. If I change it to here, now the guide was this one, the bottom right, and the block adapt to this size. Okay, so if I want to put it at first, I will put it there. Okay, just a really simple example. Let's now apply the grid to the front end. Right now we only manipulated the value inside the CSS grid builder, but if I exit the grid builder, you'll see that the CSS grid didn't apply yet. Okay, so we need to apply it for each breakpoint view. So let's open the grid builder. By the way, you see that now the icon is yellowed. That means that we have some data inside the grid builder. It's not applied yet inside the front end, but we have some data. So if we reopen the grid, you see that we will still see the design that we were working on. Okay, So now that I want to apply this particular grid to our front end, let's just click on this button, apply grid and close. Once I apply it, the script will apply the values that we chose for the parent. So you see now the gap 20 pixel, the grid template columns and the grid templates rows values have been filled for us. Okay, and if I click on any children, you see that the grid column and the grid row has been also filled for us. Great. Let's come back to the grid builder, reopen it. Now what we want to do is to make it responsive. So let's say we want to go to the tablet portrait, for example. And now we are going to remove a column. Great. Now we have 3 columns. But you see, there is no room enough on the rows, and the last block has not enough spaces to be inside the 4 rows. So we need to add another row. And now the block 10 fits perfectly inside our grid. Let's apply the grid and close. And you see now we are in the tablet portrait view and our grid is now 3 columns. Okay, there is a little tip just to avoid closing the grid each time. You can open the grid, change the breakpoint. Let's remove again a column. Let's adapt the grid to the number of rows. Instead of closing it, we'll just apply the grid and continue. We have a message that the grid has been correctly applied. Let's move on to the mobile portrait. Let's make it 1 row. Oops, and you see the block 1 is now outlined with a red border. Why? Let's click on it. It's because we set the column end to 3. The problem is that our grid has only 1 column. So it's overflowing the number of columns set on the grid. So we need to remove one column end. Let's just make it 2. And now our grid is not overflowing anymore. But let's remove the child view. You see that the guide are not perfectly displaying the grid. That's because we have 10 items and only 7 rows. Let's move it to 10. That should be good, right? Oh no, because here we need 11 because this one is taking 2, right? So we need 11 rows. Let's apply grid and continue. Close. And you see that now the mobile portrait has been applied, and also the landscape, without closing each time the grid builder. Okay. Of course, right now we are applying all the values on the ID level. Okay, but the CSS grid builder is also able to apply the values on classes, but the workflow is slightly different. Let me explain. I'm going to go back in the desktop. I'm going to apply a class. Okay, let's say container grid. Okay. And now you see we don't have values on the class. It's not yellow anymore, but let's reopen it. And you see a message on the left, class detected. The grid settings will be saved as custom CSS. So why is that? It's because Bricks natively doesn't allow you to put values, grid values. These values here are always applying on the ID level. It doesn't support the classes yet. Okay, so since we want our data stored inside the class instead of the ID level, we need to pass this information inside the custom CSS field. Okay, this is a big difference between the ID level and the class level. Let's come back to the grid builder. And you see, we don't have the blocks anymore, but since we are on a class, we have the child, nth child information. So these, the grids that we will apply on the container will target the children, any kind of children. If you apply this class to another container, okay, it will apply to the children of this container and not the block, the specific block that we are building on, right? I hope it's clear. But we can manipulate, of course, these values. So, for example, make the first child bigger compared to the other. Let's readapt the row and apply the grid. Of course, it won't change anything here because the ID level has the priority for now. But let's check what happened in the custom CSS. You see that we are now valuing the custom CSS. Let's open it and we see that the grid builder generated this code for us. It added the grid template columns and rows. It set the grid row column to unset just to avoid conflict with responsive settings. And our first child is set to grid row 1-3 and grid column 1-3. So everything is stored inside the custom CSS. The only gotcha you have to keep in mind when working with classes is if you want to now change the grid on the class level. Let's come back to the grid builder. And let's say I want to make it bigger, like this. Apply grid and close. Let's come back to the CSS. And you see that now the builder generated another code, right? It doesn't delete the old one automatically. Because, why that? Because you could have other styles inside this custom field. And you can manipulate this code. So we don't want to mess with your code. And of course it will work because since it's passed it after the old one, this one get the priority and it will have the priority compared to the old one. But you are creating junk CSS. So the good practice in this case is to remove the old one manually, just delete, and keep the last generated CSS for you. This is the only gotcha for the classes. And of course, like we see right now, the class won't have the priority compared to the ID level. So make sure if the class is not applying as it should, make sure that you don't have competing settings on the ID level. Right? Okay, I'll stop right now for the simple grids and let's move on with the next example. In this example, I want to show you an overlapping grid. So I prepared 3 containers, which include each one an image, and I want to create an effect where the central image will overlap the 2 others. So I'm going to click on the container, set it to grid, and open the CSS grid builder. I'm going to create a 5 column and 5 rows grid, and I'm going to apply some styles to the images. The first one, let's resize it like this. The third one, we will resize it and place it to the bottom. And now I want my central image to be a bit bigger. I will do 3 to 3, and I will move it on the first cell of the image. So it will overlap on the first one and the last one. But since I want it to be on top of the both image, I need to set a z-index. So I'm going to click on the image wrapper 2, and I'm going to set a z-index equal to 1. Okay, I'm going to apply and close the grid builder, and you see now that the images took the places inside the grid, and the first one is overlapping the other ones. I can of course come back to the grid, make it maybe a bit larger, the first one and the last one. I'm going to resize it, apply again, close the builder, and you see now the first image take 3 columns, and the same thing for the background. And that's it for the second example. You see, it's really easy to create overlapping grids using the CSS Grid Builder. Let's move on to the third example. Let's hide this element and show you a post grid. So if we inspect the DOM, you see that I have a query loop looping inside my post custom post type, and I'm outputting the featured image, the title, the excerpt, and a button. And I have 10 posts. Okay, so just like the class that we showed on the first example, when we are dealing with query loops, and since we don't have access to each child settings, we need to apply the grid to the container, just like we did with the class. So let's click on the container of the grid, and let's click on display grid, and let's open the CSS grid and see what it is inside the grid. So first thing, you see an information message here, query loop detected, the grid settings will be saved as custom CSS, just like the class warning we saw earlier. And as the class, you see that all of our children are nth child that we are going to manipulate from the parent. Okay? And let's say I want a 3-column grid, and I'm going to expand this one to 2, and let's fix the rows to fit our grid, and let's apply and close the grid. And now you see that our first item will take the first 2, these one, 2 columns, 2 rows, and each item will take just 1. Okay, let's check what happened in the settings. So our gap has been added to the correct field, and let's go into CSS, and you see we have the same CSS declaration added on the class, but this time it's added on the ID level of the parent container of our query loop. Okay, and let's say that there is too much white space here. I want to expand the image. For example, I'm going to copy the last declaration. I'm going to target the figure, and I'm going to change it. Since I'm inside a flex container, I'm going to set flex 1. And now you see that my image will take all the available space inside the grid just to fill it, and leave just the necessary space for the post title and the excerpt and the button. Okay, let's say I want to make it responsive, so I'm going back to the CSS grid, Let's click on it. Let's go inside the tablet, and I'm going to remove this column. Add the necessary rows, apply grid, close it, and you see our first grid here is taking all the horizontal space plus 2 columns, sorry, 2 rows, and each child will take just 1 cell, 1 column and 1 row for all the query loop. And let's go back to the CSS, see what happened. You see that this CSS has been applied only in the tablet, and if we change it to the desktop, we will have our CSS declaration for the tablet, right? But now, a really interesting case. If you want to add a static card inside your query loop, right now in Bricks, native Bricks, you can't really do that unless you want to create your custom CSS, but let's do it really easily with the CSS grid. So let's just put a div on the same level of our query loop. So I'm going to put a block. I'm going to set it to be width 100, 100, and I'm going to apply a background just to show you it's unique. And now I want to place it at the second place here, for example. So let's click on the container. Let's reopen the CSS grid. And now we have a child, the 11th child of the grid. Let's place it at the second one. Apply grid. Close it. And now our static block is inside the grid, just like it was inside the query loop, but just a CSS effect. And all my posts are displaying right after the static block. So eventually you can add any static cards inside your query loops, like ads or any specific message you want to add to your query loops. You can easily do it with the CSS Builder. And I think we are done with the third example. Alright guys, I hope you enjoyed this video. I tried to cover some interesting examples, probably things that you manage every day in your designs. And comment below if you have any question or if you have any suggestion. And that's it for now. And I hope to see you in the next video overview for the next release. Bye bye guys.